So one of the questions I get most from people in the building I live in, as we've said before, I live in a skyscraper, is about shades. And it's about the cost of automated shades. In particular, they look at the Lutron shades that people like us recommend and they go, oh my gosh, that's $1,000, $2,000. I can go to cheapandcheerfulbadshades.com and get something for $200. And I thought it would be worth us thinking through sort of out loud a bit. Why are good shades so expensive? How do we justify this additional 10 times cost off? So do you ever run into that, Kevin? Do you ever know anyone blanch at the price of shades for you?
Yeah, well, without a doubt, right? There's a lot of factors that go into why an automated shade is more expensive. And oftentimes the main jump is the fact that we have a manual shade and we're going to an automated shade. And that is kind of the first part that adds a cost to it. And then it can really vary beyond that. What type of fabrics you're selecting, what type of window treatments you're selecting, and how that looks. The reality is that our clients spend so much money on the windows and doors and views and landscapes and all the different stuff that you have there. And the amount of money that it takes to make those actually function in a very easy way ends up being a very small percentage difference of what they've spent overall on what they're trying to put into the house. Keith.
Yeah, I think the experience I've seen with people is if someone, let's focus on just automated shades, but if someone has very low expectations of an automated shade, like if they are happy looking for the remote, looking around for the remote, trying to find it, and then clicking the remote for each room that they want to open, they probably will be happier or happy enough with kind of a more entry level shade. Once clients set their expectations a little higher, they want the shades to go up and down at certain times of day. They want it to respond to a button on their lighting control system. They want it to kind of be a lot smarter, quieter. They start asking more of it. That's when the difference between kind of a more basic motorized shade and something like Lutron really does start to stand out. So I do think clients' expectations are a pretty big determining factor.
Yeah, and integrating those into, as you describe, into the lifestyle is really interesting. We have a westerly faced apartment, so during the summertime, now actually we have an easterly faced apartment, which means we get the morning sun. We used to have a westerly faced apartment, which we didn't need shades; we needed flame-proof curtains because it got so hot. But we're now on the other side of the building, so we have an easterly face, so we get the morning sun. So we have our set such that one set half an hour before sunrise come down, and half an hour before sunset they go up. And while you can do that with cheapandcheerful.com shades, what you can't necessarily do is connect that to the lighting system so that the house, as the shades go up, the lighting in the afternoon, some lighting goes on. And it's that sort of scene and that sort of choreographing that you get when you add all of these things together.
That's right. Yeah, and you talk about kind of the scene based or this uniformity of multiple things happening at one time. Another thing that happens with window treatments is that we end up with multiple window treatments on windows that span an open space. So you may have like a family room area that connects to a breakfast room and a kitchen. And the better quality shades, the system oriented shades, we can do things where we have things like hembar alignment, where everything is like perfectly level and it all comes down together. And so it's got this great pageantry and beauty of a shade that comes down and is all uniform together, as opposed to kind of one coming down and one a little bit behind it or moving too fast and going up and down. And so the better shades, the better quality shades have some intelligence built into that to not only give you that experience where that lighting and shading and everything happens together, but it also looks beautiful and functions really well and in a uniform way.
Yeah. And I think, again, that goes back to that expectation. I think for most of our clients, they're not going to the granite place and saying, I don't know anyone that's kind of that color, right? Like they have very specific expectations of what their house is going to look like and how it's going to function. And they care about the appliances they have and where they're placed and what the windows look like because they're building a dream home. And so if their expectation is not a remote hung on a nail, which I have seen in one of the most expensive houses I've ever been in, their shades were controlled by remotes that were hung on nails, just hammered in the wall right next to the switches for the room. Uh, if that's your expectation, again, you can probably find something a little cheaper that's going to work. But for most of our clients, the difference between the price of that shade and the price of a really high end, great quality shade with all of the programming options in the world is not that big.
I think you make a good point about the countertops, though, as well. It's not just the countertops; it's the wood floors, it's the furniture, it's the books on the shelf. It's not unusual in a high-end house for people to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on furniture, okay, and you're going to let sunlight bleach that. So what shades do is it stops the sunlight bleaching it. But if you don't put automated shades in of some sort, 75% of the time, you're never going to change a manual shade. I think there's a statistical something like 78% of manual shades never get opened or closed, which means you spend all this money on your landscaping and you've got this great view and you don't see that either. So again, you spent this money creating this dream home and you're letting one of the cheapest things you could do destroy the value of the experience gave you. Because trust me, once you get past manual shade into automated shade, the step to good automated shade is not as big. So once you've accepted the automated shade, getting a good one makes a significant difference to how you live in the house.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny you mentioned the bleaching the floor things. I was actually just with a customer a few months back, and he was actually selling this very modern, contemporary home, and he didn't have automated window treatments, and so as he was getting the house ready, getting ready to sell it, they were moving some furniture out, staging it with new stuff, making sure it was all ready to go. And when he pulled back an area rug that was down, the floors were drastically different. The space outside of the area rug versus underneath it, he had to redo the entire floors in his house because they were so badly bleached that went into it. And in doing so, he ended up putting automated shades all the way around the house so that they could actually make that a selling feature of the resale of this home, and make sure that didn't happen ever again. It was remarkable. I couldn't believe how bad that happened.
And it doesn't just have to be shades, of course. It can be curtains. It can be drapes. We can automate and move lots of different things. I know they're very sophisticated room dividers. And once you've gone down that track, a designer can go crazy making it fit the look and feel of the building.
Yeah, Nigel, that's right. One of the things I think that really drives cost a lot when it comes to automated window treatments is the type of fabric or design you're looking for, because they're not just a window treatment. A lot of times they're part of the beauty of the space and they're a design element of that room that you're in. And it might be a specific fabric that is used for curtains in the space, or a hand woven, grass weaved fabric that's a roller shade that comes down that was made in Vietnam, and they're beautiful. They're incredible. They're incredible fabrics and weaves that are available that really add a lot, not just to the functionality of the space and the ability to control light in the space, but that add an element of design and beauty to the space as well.
I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions about Lutron specifically. I think some good marketing from other brands kind of convinced people that Lutron only sells like a few fabrics. But I know you guys in Houston you work with a lot of third-party vendors that will put any fabric, like literally any fabric you can imagine, we could put onto a Lutron roller. And they're actually designed to be sold that way. So you can separate the automation from the choice of fabrics, which does, as Nigel said, give designers so many options.
And by the way, if you can get to a Lutron design center, and they're all over the country, it's really worth it. And I tell you what, one of the best, shades going up and down after a while, we get that. One of the best parts of their demo is the difference between the percentage. I can't quite remember the grading, but this one lets through this percent of light, and this one lets through this percent of light. And they're really different. And the numbers don't sound, this is 3%, this is 5%, this is whatever it is. The numbers don't sound very different. But when you see it, it's really different. And it really makes a significant, how much light do you really want in this room? How reflective it is. And then, of course, if you live downtown like I do, the next thing is, can you put channels in? So, channels are these sort of grips that the shades go through. So I live downtown. If you look out of our bedroom window, there are 3 skyscrapers that leave the lights on all the night. We don't see none of that because we have real blackout with channels, and it makes our room go completely dark.
Yeah, I think that is important. And before we move on from the opacities, the different opacities, the 1, 3, 5, 10%, when you work with a professional company, like we will mix those. You don't have to select one for the entire home. We'll mix those based on the need for privacy, for how much light comes in that window. Is it west facing, south facing, north facing? So I think you're right. Like that does open up a lot of options for us. And if somebody was to just pick one based on what they think looks the best, they may miss out on a lot of the value that can come from having those shades done correctly.
Yeah. So speaking of the side channels, Nigel, I've got a funny story. I was actually in Madison, Wisconsin yesterday, flew in Tuesday, came back, and a colleague of mine was staying in another room, and he happened to get stuck in the handicap room, the room that was designed for to make sure that it was more automated. So in my room, accessible room. Thank you so much. Yeah. And so in my room, I had this manual chain to get my blackout curtains to go down, but that had side channels, but it was so messed up. The channels were broken open. The shade was flopping out of it. I couldn't get it back in. I actually spent 30 minutes trying to fix their shade to make it better. And then when I got down to breakfast the next morning, I was talking to my colleague and he's like, yeah, did you have automated shades in your room? And I said, no. And he said, yeah, I did. I just hit a button. My blackout shades went down. I had channels. It was perfect. He said, I slept great. And I had these beams of light that were coming in all night because I had a parking lot light right outside of my window. So yeah, side channels, beautiful. And when they're automated, you have fewer issues that come out of that.
So we're gonna end this with my best hotel tip for shades or lights, particularly for curtains. Go into your closet and get the trouser hanger, and use those clips to keep the curtains shut. And that's the only way I ever get dark rooms.
I have to have some light coming in, or I'll probably never wake up.